Hi guys, John Florez again, part 4 of the Untold Stories. Now I'm kind of reaching for it, kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, but well, you be the judge of that, okay? I'll just dive in and tell you what I think. Okay, we left off when I was leaving LA with my bride, Carol, my sweetheart for, what was it, 12 years? And we left for Ojai, California, much against her wishes because I just wanted to live my dream of a country life for a while and have a time out from the music business. And she really didn't want to do it. So my deal with her was we can always go back to LA, we'll just sell the house and go back home. We had a place, 716 El Toro Drive, in what's called the Arbolada, which is the oak tree section of Ojai. And I just loved it there. What I didn't know was that I was allergic to oak trees. So for the first time in my life, I had allergies and I didn't know where they were coming from. And that's because our property was just loaded with oak trees. Anyway, so we end up there, love this place, and Carol decides she wants to remodel it, which is great. That kept her very busy, and we had people come up from LA she was working with. And meanwhile, on my break from the traditional music business, Joe Scandore, Don Rickles' manager, who had introduced himself just prior to our move from Tarzana, Joe called and said, "Can I come up and meet with you? There's something I want to speak with you about." When he came up to Ojai, Carol and I took him to the Ranch House, which was Paul Newman's favorite restaurant at that period of time, and took Joe there. It's a little gourmet place. It's wonderful food. And Joe said, "I have a project idea that I think might be kind of fun. I know it's not traditional record business, but it's these fractured fairy tales." And I mentioned this in my autobiography series. He would have been able to line up the biggest names in comedy on TV and on the show circuit and all of that to play parts or roles in classic fairy tales told funny and spontaneously, so that all the cracking up and all the ad-libs and all of that were intact. And I just loved the idea. So unfortunately, Darnielle, my best friend and arranger composer, said, "John, I think we need Walter Schaefer involved. He's a friend of mine's husband, and he's a marketing whiz." So we take this meeting at Joe Scandore's house regarding the Fractured Fairy Tale project. Walter Schaefer comes in as the marketing whiz. Pat McMahon from Phoenix, our celebrity, and also has a marketing company here in Phoenix. He came in. Darnielle was there. I was there, and Joe Scandore. And Walter says, "Well, let's market it through supermarkets instead of through traditional record chains. We can have these albums and cassettes right there next to the checkout counter at the end dumps." And it's a non-traditional way of marketing, but there are so many housewives who are soap opera fans, you ought to just put it out right there where they can see it and be tempted to buy it. Okay. Well, that made sense, but of course none of us knew anything about the grocery business. And so, guess what? They sent me, the non-businessman, the music guy, to the Midwest through contacts to talk to some grocery chain people in a couple of states. I did, and they said, "Okay, well, if you want to do that, you provide us with a product and we'll support you." Okay. So I'm so totally out of my league with this, it's amazing. But I went, I showed up, I got the info that they would support us, and then I came back and reported it to the group, all gathered again at Joe Scandore's house. So the only thing we were lacking was funding to do it. And I honestly don't know why, for instance, Joe didn't try to get that through a number of the celebrities who would have been participating in it, because a number of them had lost their record label deals because the music business had gone rock, and artists who'd had tons of records over the years for the major labels, they didn't have record deals anymore, and I think they would have been more than delighted to help fund the cause and also have a lot of fun doing a very, very hilarious project with the Fractured Fairy Tales. But I don't know why Joe didn't approach him. I couldn't get outside funding for it at the time, so the idea died. And I'm sorry, because I would have given anything to be in the control room and watch that happen in front of me with those funny people doing ad-lib fairy tales. Okay, so while in Ojai and Carol's redecorating and la 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 la, we take a couple of vacations to Hawaii, which were just gorgeous. I did no production work whatsoever in LA. And Roger Gordon, my dear friend, one of my best friends in the business, who was at Screen Gems Columbia, they had bought my catalog and thus the rights to Pat McManus and Lefty Podrosky's songs. Roger felt that when I left for Ojai, I abandoned him. And I didn't think so at the time, but he's right, I did. I didn't really have an intention to go back. I needed a timeout, and I didn't know what I was going to do after the timeout. Also, Lefty and Pat weren't real happy with me because I was the one cutting all of their songs because I had an exclusive on them. They wrote for my company and they bring them to me first. We had a blast with their coming out to my home in Tarzana and previewing their latest tunes together. They both kept kind of notepads that they carried on them for phrases they heard on the street that were cute and catchy, and then they'd use what they'd written down, sometimes choruses, sometimes verses, but I thought it was just a great idea. And I read recently that Shania Twain's ex-husband, Mutt Lange, has a whole file system of catchphrases that he just goes through, looks at and says, oh, let's try this one. Yeah, Pat and Lefty were doing that back then for my company. It was great, but I left everybody behind in LA because I had just had enough. And I wasn't hot anymore, and I just didn't want to go through scratching and scraping and starting basically over again. Because, you know, you have a hit record, it doesn't last. What have you done for me lately, John? I hadn't done anything. I had tried. All of those A&M projects were on the shelf. That's where I tried. And really, Clive Davis with The Fifth Dimension, had anything gone on with Love in the Room, and had we had success with that, I'm sure I would have stayed to see all of that out. But I didn't. So here I am up in Ojai with allergies, just saying, well, la 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 la, and we're taking it kind of easy. And Carol and I and our best friends, we'd get out on a little boat and we'd take some snacks and some drinks and stuff like that and spend a few hours out on the boat, or go to the water spa, which was like steam room type spas that were kind of rustic and out of the way but really fun. And gosh, I was having, you could call it a retirement, but really it was supposed to be a timeout, and that's what it was. So without going into any details, Carol and I split. And that took me totally by surprise because I really thought I'd be married to her for the rest of my life. But as it happens, we split up and we divorced. And when we divorced, I'm living up there all by myself. I haven't made a record. I tried to do the Scandore Fairy Tales project, but that didn't happen. And now, what am I going to do? I'm not going to be on this multi-acre property. I know Carol wants half of that, as she should. And so I put our home for sale and sold it, split the proceeds with Carol, and headed back to Phoenix, where family and friends were. And I thought maybe I can get my head on straight back home. Because a divorce, I'll tell you, a divorce and a move, that was a giant move from up near Santa Barbara back to Phoenix with belongings that had to go to two separate residences, la 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 la. So it was traumatic. And thus, I'd had my time out, and now I didn't want the trauma of the music business. That's why I had the time out. But I did have a trauma I never expected, which came with my personal life and the move. So came back to Phoenix, and as I mentioned to you before in my autobiography, one of the projects that was suggested and I got funding for was the great love themes from the soap operas. And Darnell and I went to London and we cut them full orchestra, and I thought, what a great idea. The soap operas are so popular, and we'll market it ourselves and get Filmata's ad agency involved, my dear friend here in Phoenix, and we'll market it directly during the soap operas, and this is just going to be a screaming success. Well, no, it wasn't. I think we sold 5 copies. I mean, it was embarrassingly bad. And I was losing my investor the money that he'd put in to send us overseas to cut it and then set up the phone banks to promote it. and pay Phil's advertising agency and all of that. So in a last-ditch attempt, I had a contact, through a contact, at Procter & Gamble back in Ohio. So I flew back to Ohio to meet with this bigwig at Procter & Gamble because Procter & Gamble sponsored most of the soap operas at the time. And the way I pitched it was either the vinyl album or cassette version of it would be ideal giveaways, or you save so many Procter & Gamble box tops and you're entitled to the album. Whatever you want to do, you can give it away. You can have customers earn it. You can do whatever, but it's a wonderful premium product for you. And the guy agreed. And he said, John, if I'm able to pitch this successfully to one of our divisions, because Lord knows Procter & Gamble has a bunch of divisions, he said, our initial order will be in the neighborhood of 100,000 albums. And I called my investor and I said, we're going to make a profit if this happens. Oh my God, after all this time and effort and direct marketing didn't work, Procter & Gamble may be purchasing it from us. Long story short, they didn't. The executive called me back and said, I pitched it to the wrong division, John. I made a mistake. I pitched it to Pampers instead of, say, lotions at Procter & Gamble. And he said, Pampers soundly rejected it, and now the word is out not to take this project, so I'm not going to pitch it to the other divisions here at P&G. Called my investor and said, that's it, I think we're in trouble. So I sold it as a spin-off to the Walden and B. Dalton book chains that had a rack job vendor in those bookstores across the United States on their revolving rack in all their stores. Sold it to them, didn't make any money during the sale, it was royalties only, we got no royalties, and my friend lost his money, and I, to this day, feel badly about that. Okay, it's not as if I didn't try, but I feel badly about that. It kind of breaks my heart. But the good news is Darnell and I did have a wonderful time in London going full orchestra with all those beautiful love songs. Okay, so selfishly speaking, I had a good time out of it, but at a business end, I lost my friend money, and that was painful. During the same period of time back in Phoenix, the Emmy Awards, I think it was 1977, could have been 78, but the Emmy Awards were happening in LA, and Joe Scandore calls and said, would you do me a favor and escort a friend of mine to the Emmy Awards for me? I'm going to be backstage with Don Rickles, who was co-hosting the event. So, okay, fly to LA, and we're sitting in Don Rickles' seats, because he's on stage, right? So we are third row center, right next to Patty Duke and John Aston, her husband. And the first nationwide network camera shot that goes out of Chevy Chase is my face with Chevy Chase's name underneath it. And they did that 3 times before somebody said, that's not Chevy Chase, that's somebody else, find the real Chevy Chase, which they did. And but it was too late. I had friends calling a week or 2 later saying, we saw you on TV as Chevy Chase. Well, truth be told, that was the bane of my existence. Well, truth be told, that wasn't the first time that had happened in many, many other ways. I couldn't even go to the grocery store. I looked so much like Chevy Chase at that period of time when he was in the Fletch movies. Here's a shot of that. And you could not distinguish us other than he had a clef in his chin and I didn't. And I could have been his movie double, I swear to God. But everywhere I go, I'm getting asked for autographs, and I'm not Chevy Chase. But I sign them anyway, because they say, we don't care who you say you are, sign his name anyway. So I do that. On the way back from the banquet at the Emmy Awards, I'm talking to Joe Scandore, Don Rickles' manager, not paying attention while we're walking. We're having this wonderful conversation, and Chevy Chase and someone else that he's talking to are coming the opposite direction toward us, and Chevy and I collided, physically collided. And he stepped back and he said, "Oh my God." And I said, I know it's the bane of my existence." And I'm told that Chevy Chase went on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, I don't know, sometime later and said, "Oh my God, I met my double at the Emmy Awards. This guy is my exact double." It was that amazing. I'm so glad that as we age differently, because now we don't look anything like each other. Thank you very much. But I thought you might get a kick out of hearing that, because I don't think I've ever shared that story publicly before. Okay, so to wrap all of this up, Ojai was a painful chapter because of the divorce. The social time spent up there and the Scandore times visiting him and trying to put a project together, that was very fun. And coming back to Arizona for a timeout to decide what to do next, that was just fine, that worked fine. And I thought, okay, I'm ready, I will return to Los Angeles and give this one more try. And as I've reported before, I went to Abe Summer, my attorney. I said, I'm interested in producing Helen Reddy. And he set up that interview, and I got to produce Helen. And Joe Scandore's friend, Stan Hanman, who's an attorney in LA, was managing Frida Payne. And they said, we'd like you to produce Frida Payne. And I did that as well. And I did several other unknown artists that I tried to sell to labels that I was terrible at that. I couldn't place anybody at a label unless I had a '1 record, then they'd sign my acts. But no. So if I had it to do all over again, this is a woulda, coulda, shoulda. If I could change my life and change my decisions that I made in my life, that would be the big point of my life where I did something differently than I actually did it. And what I would do is I would have retired altogether from the music business and found out what in the world I was going to do next by just poking around and trying stuff. Okay, that's it for now. I've gone on way too long, but I hope you enjoyed the stories. And for now, that's going to be it for a while. So until next time, you guys take care. Thanks for watching, as always. You take care. Bye-bye.
head goes on and my heart goes on when the band goes boom, 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 boom. And my head goes on and my heart goes on when the band goes boom, 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 boom. Love has made a whack out of me, I fear. Though your heart is far, still your hand is near. When you speak, it's silence to my ear. When you smile at me, it's a laugh I hear. And my head goes up and my heart goes out, and the band goes boom, 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 boom. And my head goes up and my heart goes out when the band goes boom, 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 boom. Now my friends all say when they hear this song, it should never be that there's something wrong. And they ask me how, it's the same old thing. You're in my bell and I go ting-a-ling, a-ling, and my head goes up and my heart goes out when the band goes boom.